Autumn 1945. The war had ended, but the world was still learning how to breathe again. Across the Atlantic, rows of barbed wire still ringed small camps that held what remained of Germany's captured soldiers. Among them were a handful of women, clerks, nurses, translators, taken when the Reich fell and shipped to the quiet farmlands of the American Midwest. To them, captivity was not just fear. It was humiliation, the kind that silences your name. Anna Mueller, 27, stood on the train platform in Kansas, staring at the endless horizon. The sky was too wide, too blue, too free. She gripped her satchel tightly, remembering what her mother had said before the war consumed everything. Knowledge makes you human, even when the world forgets it. Now, after years of destruction, she felt anything but human. The camp was small, more like a farm than a prison. Wooden barracks, fields of corn swaying in the wind, and a single white building with a flag fluttering above it. A painted sign read, "Camp Lowell, POW Detachment Number 14. An American lieutenant named James Porter greeted the new arrivals. He was polite but distant, a man who had seen too much to smile freely. "You'll be assigned light duties," he said through the interpreter. "Kitchen, laundry, repairs, no punishment work. You'll be treated according to the Geneva rules." Anna bowed slightly, still suspicious. Everything here seemed civilized, too civilized. A week later, the unexpected happened. During roll call, the camp commandant, a former schoolteacher from Ohio, announced a new initiative. "The town council has offered to open the public library to POWs under escort. Anyone interested in visiting may sign up. Behavior must be exemplary." A murmur spread through the ranks. A library. It sounded like a trick. Anna exchanged wary glances with her friend Liselotte, a former typist. "What do they want from us?" Liselotte whispered. "Maybe to test us," Anna replied. But when the clipboard came down the line, she signed her name anyway. 2 days later, the truck rattled down a dusty road toward the small town of Lowell. The women sat in the back, silent, their khaki uniforms blending with the wheat fields that stretched forever. The town came into view: white houses, a church steeple, a diner, and, at the center, a brick building with tall windows and ivy climbing its walls. A sign above the door read, "Lowell Public Library, established 1903. When the guard opened the truck gate, Anna hesitated. "Are we allowed inside?" she asked. Lieutenant Porter nodded. "You're guests today, not prisoners." Inside, the smell of paper and dust hit her like a memory. Long oak shelves lined the walls, filled with books that gleamed in the sunlight. Rows and rows, more than she had ever seen even before the war. Her knees almost buckled. She hadn't touched a book in 5 years. The librarian, a grey-haired woman named Mrs. Whitaker, smiled kindly. "Welcome, ladies. You may browse quietly. Please treat the books gently. They've survived a lot, just like you." The women wandered through the aisles like pilgrims in a temple. Some wept softly. Others simply stood frozen, afraid to touch. Anna reached out and ran her fingers along the spines. Shakespeare, Emerson, Dickens, Twain. The smell of ink and time filled her lungs. When she finally opened one, a worn copy of Little Women, her throat tightened. The first line felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents." She hadn't realized how much she missed the sound of sentences that weren't orders or propaganda. Lieutenant Porter watched from the doorway, arms crossed. He'd expected curiosity, maybe confusion, not tears, not this reverence. It struck him how hunger wasn't just for food. Sometimes it was for meaning. Mrs. Whitaker approached him quietly. "You see," she said, "give people a story, and they remember they're human again." Porter nodded slowly. "I think I'm remembering too." Over the next weeks, the library visits continued every Saturday. Under escort, the women would file into town, exchange nods with curious locals, and spend 2 precious hours in silence among the shelves. Anna became a regular. She started borrowing simple English books, children's stories at first, then essays, then poetry. Her English improved quickly, her sentences careful but sincere. One afternoon, Mrs. Whittaker handed her a notebook. "For your thoughts," she said. "Words are good medicine." That night, Anna wrote her first diary entry since before the war. September 3rd, 1945. I read about people who live without fear. I wonder if I will be one again. As the weeks passed, something subtle shifted in the town. The guards no longer carried rifles inside. The locals began leaving baked goods by the library steps. A few children even waved at the women as they arrived. Once, when a gust of wind scattered papers from a nearby shop, Anna and Lieselotte instinctively ran to help gather them. The shopkeeper hesitated, then thanked them softly. "Danke," Anna replied automatically, then corrected herself. "Thank you." It was such a small exchange, but it echoed louder than any speech. Inside the camp, other prisoners began to notice the change. The women spoke of books like Miracles, stories of worlds without hate, where people solved problems with courage and words instead of bullets. Evenings grew quieter. Instead of whispering fears, they read aloud from borrowed pages until the guards called lights out. Once, a sergeant walked by their barracks and stopped, listening to Anna's voice. "It is never too late to be what you might have been." He didn't understand why that line hit him so hard, but he didn't stop her either. In late October, Mrs. Whittaker organized something unthinkable, a book discussion group between American and German women. It was the first time the townsfolk and POWs sat in the same room without barriers. The topic was Pride and Prejudice. Anna sat nervously beside a young local teacher named Clara Benson, both clutching the same worn copy. When Clara asked what Anna thought of Elizabeth Bennet, Anna replied carefully, "She speaks even when the world tells her not to. That is, very brave." Clara smiled. "So are you." A pause hung between them, heavy but kind. Then Clara reached across the table and offered her hand. "For what it's worth, welcome to Lowell." That night, Anna couldn't sleep. She kept hearing Clara's words echoing in her mind. Welcome. It had been years since anyone said that to her. The next morning, she asked Lieutenant Porter if she could write a letter to the library thanking them. He approved it without hesitation. She wrote slowly, carefully, her handwriting deliberate but steady. To the people of Lowell, you gave us what we forgot we were allowed to have: books, kindness, and quiet. You reminded us that minds do not have to stay prisoners. When I go home, I will build a library too. Maybe small, but free. When Mrs. Whittaker received the letter, she read it aloud to the whole library staff. Several cried. One said softly, "That's the first peace treaty I've ever believed in." Outside, the Kansas wind carried the smell of harvest and rain. The war was over, but for the first time, so was the hatred. And among the rows of borrowed books, a few women who had once lived under darkness began to see the light again, word by word, page by page. Winter settled over Kansas like a quilt of quiet. Snow dusted the camp fences, and the fields turned to silver beneath the pale sun. Life slowed, but the library visits did not stop. Every Saturday, through wind and frost, the truck rattled down the same dusty road, carrying women who once represented a broken nation, now carrying notebooks instead of rifles. Inside the library, warmth awaited them, a fire crackling in the hearth, Mrs. Whittaker greeting them with cocoa, and the faint smell of ink and paper that had become their new ritual. Anna Müller always sat at the same oak table by the window. She read until her eyes ached, not to escape, but to remember what freedom of thought felt like. On this particular morning, Lieutenant James Porter entered the library for the first time without his uniform cap. He looked oddly human in the soft light, his posture less rigid. "Morning, Miss Muller," he said almost shyly. "Good morning, Lieutenant," she replied, her accent still thick, but her confidence growing. He gestured to the notebook beside her. "Still writing?" "Yes," she said. "I write about the books and about the feeling they leave. It's… how do you say it?" He smiled. "Therapy." She considered it. "Yes, but kinda." The following week, Mrs. Whittaker announced that the town council wanted to hold an exhibition, Books Beyond Borders, showcasing the letters and reflections written by POW readers. "Your words," she told the women, "have changed how people see you. They need to read them." The women exchanged uncertain glances. Lieselotte leaned toward Anna. "Do you think they mean it?" Anna nodded slowly. "They've given us trust. Maybe it's time we return it." Each nurse, typist, and translator submitted a few pages, notes on stories that had healed them. Anna's essay was titled The Quiet of Pages. She wrote, "In a book, no one asks where you were born, Hey, only ask if you understand." When Mrs. Whittaker read it aloud at the town hall, the audience of locals sat in reverent silence. For the first time, they saw the POWs not as enemies, but as students of peace. Soon, something remarkable began happening. Children from the town started visiting the library during POW hours. At first, they stayed close to their mothers, whispering and watching. But curiosity always wins. One little girl approached Anna, clutching a copy of Charlotte's Web. "Do you like stories?" she asked timidly. Anna smiled, surprised. "Yes, very much." "Will you read this to me?" Anna hesitated, then nodded. She began reading aloud, her German accent coloring every word. The child listened intently, eyes wide. By the end of the chapter, she was leaning against Anna's shoulder. When the girl's mother came to fetch her, she paused and said quietly, "Thank you." Anna bowed her head, too overcome to speak. That evening she wrote in her diary, "Children do not inherit hate. They learn it. And maybe they can unlearn it too." The library became a bridge, invisible but unbreakable. By January, even some of the guards had begun sitting in on the reading sessions, listening as the women recited passages in accented English. One guard admitted to Porter, "It's the quietest I've felt since the war started." Porter nodded. Maybe that's what winning is supposed to sound like. Weeks later, snow gave way to thaw. The fields turned soft, and rumors began swirling through the camp, whispers that repatriation might soon begin. Some prisoners cheered at the thought of home. Others grew silent, torn between relief and grief. When the news was confirmed, Mrs. Whittaker decided to host one last gathering, a farewell reading. The entire town was invited. That evening, the library glowed like a sanctuary. Lamps cast halos of light across the tables. American soldiers, townsfolk, and German prisoners sat side by side. No flags, no uniforms, only books. Mrs. Whittaker spoke first. "These women reminded us that the world's truest borders are made of ignorance, and that stories, not armies, tear them down." Then she called Anna forward. "Would you read yours?" Anna stepped to the front, clutching a thin, folded paper. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from emotion too large to contain. Her voice was steady, her English careful. "Once I was told knowledge belonged only to the powerful. Then I came here, to this place of words and light. The people who gave us these books did not see us as enemies. They saw us as minds. Because of that, I can imagine a future again." Silence. Then applause. Not polite, but warm and full. Even the guards stood. Mrs. Whittaker's eyes glistened. "Thank you, my dear. You've taught us something precious." After the event, as the crowd thinned, Lieutenant Porter approached Anna by the window. Outside, the snow had begun to fall again, soft and forgiving. He said quietly, "When you go home, Miss Müller, what will you do?" She smiled faintly. "I will build a library. It may have only a few books, but it will be free." He extended his hand. "Then you'll do more for peace than any soldier ever could." Anna shook it, feeling the warmth of his palm and the weight of a chapter closing. The next morning, the trucks lined up once more. The women packed their meager belongings, notebooks, letters, and borrowed dreams. Anna slipped one book into her satchel, returned by Mrs. Whittaker herself. Little Women. "Take it," the librarian had said. "You read it like it was yours, Aura. Zeddy." As the convoy pulled away, townsfolk gathered by the road, waving handkerchiefs. The women waved back through the open slats, tears freezing on their cheeks. Anna turned for one last look at the library. The building stood still against the sky, a brick guardian of everything they had rediscovered. A faint glow from its windows followed her until it disappeared behind the fields. That night, back at the camp, she wrote her final entry. February 12, 1946. Tomorrow we leave America. I once feared I would never see home again. Now I fear I will never see kindness like this again. But maybe that's not true. Maybe kindness is portable. Spring, 1948. 3 years had passed since Anna Müller had last seen the wide skies of Kansas. Germany was rebuilding, but the scars of war still lived in its bricks and its people. In a quiet town on the outskirts of Bremen, she stood inside a bomb-damaged schoolhouse that now smelled of plaster and rain. On one surviving wall, she had painted a single word in chalk: Bibliothek. The neighbors thought she was mad. "A library?" one man scoffed. "There's no food, no coal, and you want books?" Anna smiled faintly. "Because when hunger ends, ignorance must not begin." With salvaged shelves and a handful of tattered volumes, she opened her library in a single classroom. Within weeks, children appeared, then mothers, then even veterans who had forgotten what quiet reading sounded like. She taught them the way Mrs. Whittaker had taught her, gently, without judgment, always beginning with stories. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the cracked windows, a postman arrived with an envelope marked U.S. Mail. The handwriting stopped her breath. Mrs. Agnes Whittaker, Lowell Public Library, Kansas. Inside lay a letter and a photograph of the brick building she remembered so vividly. "My dear Anna, the library still stands, though the ivy has climbed higher. Your letter from the ship reached us long ago, and I've thought of you often. Our town council placed a small plaque in the reading room that says, 'Words crossed the ocean before peace did.' Tell me, did you keep your promise?" Anna laughed softly through tears. She dipped her pen in ink and wrote back at once. "Yes, Mrs. Whittaker. Our shelves are few, but every child here knows that books are not a luxury. They are light. You lent us yours. Now it spreads." By 1952, the Bremen Reading Room had become the town's heart. Its visitors came barefoot, soot-stained, but eager. Donations trickled in, British manuals, French novels, even a box of American textbooks shipped through the Red Cross. Anna handled every parcel as if it contained treasure. Sometimes she would pause over the English titles, tracing the letters like old friends. To Kill a Mockingbird, Walden, The Grapes of Wrath. Each one whispered of places where courage meant more than conquest. On the wall hung a framed clipping that Porter had mailed years before. A photograph of the farewell gathering in Lowell, captioned, "Peace begins with pages." Whenever the children asked about the strange American faces, she would tell them, "They gave me my first library card and my second chance." In 1958, Anna received another letter, this time from the Lowell Historical Society. "Dear Miss Müller, Mrs. Whittaker passed peacefully last winter. Before she did, she asked that a box of books be sent to the woman who once called our library a temple. They are enclosed, along with her note, for the one who will keep the doors open when mine close. The box arrived a month later, 12 volumes wrapped in brown paper. On top lay Little Women, the very copy she had once read as a prisoner. Inside the front cover, Mrs. Whittaker had written, "For Anna Müller, because freedom begins with thought." Anna pressed the page to her chest and whispered, "Danke." 2 decades later, 1970. Germany was modern now, streets repaved, cities alive with neon. But inside the Bremen Public Library, people still spoke softly, as if honoring sacred ground. The librarian was older, silver streaking her hair, but her eyes still carried that same unshakable calm. A young journalist from an American magazine visited one afternoon to write about post-war reconstruction. When he learned Anna had once been a POW in Kansas, his curiosity flared. "Do you remember America?" he asked. She smiled. "Every day. I remember the sound of pages turning in a room that smelled of dust and forgiveness." He looked around at the rows of shelves. "You built all this because of that?" She nodded. "I built this because someone once believed that even an enemy should read." When his article appeared months later, its title read, "The Library That Peace Built." In 1975, a small delegation from the US Embassy visited Bremen. Among them was a grey-haired man who introduced himself as Major James Porter, Return. Anna gasped. "Lieutenant Porter?" He laughed softly. "I was promoted eventually." They embraced, awkward at first, then, with the warmth of shared ghosts, finally at rest. "I came to see if your promise held," he said, glancing at the shelves. "It held," she said, smiling. "And it's contagious." He handed her a small gift, a polished brass nameplate engraved, "Anna Müller Reading Room." "For the woman who proved victory can be quiet," he said. Years rolled forward. The world changed, but her library remained a constant, an island of peace in a noisy century. Every April she held a Friendship Day where children read aloud stories from around the world. One year, an American exchange student stood to read Little Women. His accent stumbled through the German translation, and Anna couldn't stop smiling. Afterward, she told him, "You read just like I did once, slowly, with hope." He grinned. "Hope's a good language." In 1985, on the library's 40th anniversary, the mayor unveiled a new plaque at the entrance. It bore Anna's favorite quote from her POW essay. "In a book, no one asks where you were born. They only ask if you understand." Beneath it, a small dedication read, "To the women who learned freedom through reading, and to the strangers who lent them light." Standing before the crowd, Anna spoke softly. "I used to think books were escape. Now I know they are bridges, and every bridge begins with someone brave enough to open a door." Applause filled the hall. Among the faces, she thought she saw Mrs. Whittaker's smile and heard the Kansas wind rustling through unseen fields. Winter 1989. Snow fell gently outside her window as Anna sat at her desk, writing what she knew might be her last letter. Her hands were thin now, her movements slow but sure. To the people of Lowell, Kansas, 44 years ago, you let a prisoner walk into a library. You did not ask for repentance or proof, only that I turn a page. That simple act taught me that peace is not signed, it is read and shared. Every child who borrows a book here is a citizen of that peace. Thank you for teaching me how to begin again. Anna Müller. She sealed the envelope, set it aside, and gazed at the shelves around her, each book a heartbeat of memory. Outside, the bells of Bremen tolled softly. She closed her eyes, whispering one final line from Little Women. "I am not afraid of storms, for I am learning how to sail my ship." Years later, visitors to the Bremen Library would stop before a small display near the entrance. Behind the glass sat a single worn volume of Little Women, a faded Kansas library card tucked inside its cover. Above it, a photograph showed a young woman in a POW uniform standing before shelves of books, eyes full of wonder. The caption read, "In 1945 she was a prisoner. In 1948 she was a librarian. In truth, she was always free." If this story reminded you that knowledge and kindness rebuild the world, subscribe for more daily WWII stories that celebrate humanity, courage, and forgiveness across enemy lines.